The land of Equestria is a land that was founded on friendship, peace, and love, but as colorful as this land is, there's a bunch of dangerous and scary creatures out there. But none are as feared as the Changelings. The Changelings were a bizarre amalgamation between pony and insect. They had a black shell-like exterior, webbed veins and tails, fangs, and blue non-reflective eyes and bug-like wings. They feed on love, and unlike ponies, they don't have cutie marks, but rather possess an ability far more effective, this one being shapeshifting. And this race was the stuff of nightmares. Or at least it was for me. Yeah, I got scared by the Changelings when I was a kid, and can you blame me? The episode that introduced the Changelings not only had one of the most shocking reveals, but also had one of the scariest villains at that point in time. And part of what made Chrysalis so scary, at least for me, was how she was. She had a cruel, manipulative, and overconfident personality who would do things like taunt her victims by torturing them emotionally, like what she did with Twilight and Cadence, which, compared to the villains we had at this point in the franchise, it was unheard of. To her unsettling voice, okay, in some dubs.
小玛利亚比我到过的任何地方都更有爱，我的变形虫臣民们可以在这里大快朵颐。
And more importantly, her design, which compared to a lot of the characters and villains that we had at this time, looked unnatural, and it was mainly due to those holes she had, which made me and a lot of fans speculate how she got them in the first place. And the scare factor didn't just stay in the show, but continued and got elevated by the fandom, as fans created some unsettling pieces of art and stories, with a lot of early Changeling fanfic portraying them as psychopathic killers and masters of manipulation. And sure, it might be silly to say that Chrysalis and the Changelings were scary, but that was the whole point of the race in the first place, as the person who designed the Changelings, Rebecca Dart, got inspired by the works of manga artists Mizuno Junko and Hino Hideshi, which had very interesting, scary, and at times confusing pieces, especially Mizuno Junko, with a lot of her art mixing cute with disturbing and colorful art, which gives this uncomfortable and cathartic feeling. And Hino's art is no different, with a lot of his art mixing uncomfortable, disturbing, and at times sadistic art mixed with graphic body horror. Concepts and aspects that, while not being that present in the show, were used in full effect in the comics. Now, the Changelings in the comics are very different from the ones we saw in the show, as the comics not only gave new aspects to the Changelings, like the fact that they can shapeshift too many times, or new arcs like Thorax assisting to the convocation of creatures in behalf of the Changeling race. But what the comics did the most was giving them lore, beginning with an origin. While in the show we never really got an origin story for the Changelings, in the comics we did. 1,000 years ago, the first Changelings and Chrysalis were merely flies. Although small, they were surprisingly smart enough that they learned how to speak. This was until Starshoal the Bearded came and planted a magical tree in the cavern that the Changelings were living in. This tree was not any ordinary tree, as it possessed an aggressive demeanor and ended up eating one of the Changelings. But within the tree, Chrysalis was born, and with this, a new era for the Changelings would begin. In the early days of the Changeling race, they seemed to be a drifter race seeking a home, with Chrysalis being the Changeling who took the title as leader, although she wasn't queen yet. So how did she become the queen of the Changelings? Well, Chrysalis would slaughter a whole city of Pegasus and their ruler, King Orion, with her disguising herself as one of the royal guards of the city and leading her forces to victory and tasting her first dose of love, which led the Changelings to destroy more cities in the future just to feed. And with this, establishing Chrysalis as the queen of the Changelings. But Chrysalis' story came to an abrupt end when Celestia harnessed the heat of the sun, unleashing it onto her Changelings, and with this giving the Changelings their iconic holes. And Celestia didn't stop there, as she would vanish the Changelings to a volcano where they would stay for a long time until they escaped and began to plan their next invasion. And with this, the One Simple Bugs became one of the scariest and most feared races in all of Equestria. Until they got reformed. Okay, so maybe this will be a very controversial thing to say, but as much as I love the Changelings, I can't deny that when they got reformed, it ruined the idea of them being the scariest race in all of Equestria. And it kinda showed, as the once scary art and fanfics now were cute and silly, and even Queen Chrysalis, the one scariest villain in the whole show, now was another generic waifu. And I wasn't alone, as a lot of Changeling fans back then were really disappointed of what they did to the whole race.
Where to start with this literal train wreck of complete idiocy and lack of any sensibility? Even the cursed comics got the hint right at what the ultimate form of Changelings would be. But nope, we just need to make them all gay and completely 86 their characters. You make them colorized pieces of unicorn shit. Completely scrapping the idea of a hive mind, you make them quasi-free-minded hippie garbage, and what seems to be a complete erasure of their memories. The bastardization of the whole species is astounding and disgusting. The whole writing staff and the people in charge really seem to not give a fuck or are completely incompetent.
And it's not like the idea of reforming the Changelings wasn't a thing in the comics, because it was. Kinda. But the comics did it in a very clever way, as instead of just reforming them, they gave a motive for why Chrysalis and the Changelings would do the things that they did. Like Chrysalis not trusting anyone because she got attacked by the Umbrums when she was younger, or why the Changelings would hate on pony kind because Celestia, their ruler, vanished them to a volcano that not only was active, but also would get fed on by a dragon. And with Chrysalis being the one to master a plan to save her subjects. This made us understand why the Changelings would follow someone like Chrysalis, but also made you sympathize with them, something that the show didn't do. And instead they opted to just turn them good and colorful because they could. We didn't explore how these changes affected them, or how the Changelings' image changed in Equestria, or even how other races came to trust them. But hey, at least this change gave us Thorax, Ocellus, and Urtica, so I can't be that mad. And if I really want to remember one of the scariest races in all of MLP, there will always be the comics and the early episodes to help me do so. But what do you guys think? Did you think that the Changelings were ruined by the later seasons? And is there any MLP race that scared you as a kid? Leave it down in the comments. And remember to like the video if you enjoyed it, and consider subscribing for more MLP videos like this one. And remember to take care guys, and I'll see you in the next video.